Welcome back to the channel. This is the review of the Fiio SA1 desktop active speaker. I've been using these speakers on my desk for a couple of weeks now. These tiny speakers retail for $199 and have every function you can think of for an active speaker. Let's check out the unboxing of these speakers. The unboxing is quite straightforward. After opening the box, you'll see a mini jack to RCA cable, the remote, cable to connect the two speakers together, and a power adapter. Underneath, it's the speakers themselves. Simple and neat packaging. So this is what's included when you purchase the SA1. Please note that no USB cables, coaxial or toslink cable is included if you want to use the wired digital connection. So here are the speakers. All the controls are on the right speaker. There are two knobs and one button on the side of the right speaker. The first knob acts as an indicator light to indicate which input mode you're in. It's also a volume knob and input selection button when you push it. The second knob is a bass adjustment knob. It allows you to adjust the bass from -6 dB to 0 dB. The third button is just a power button. For the speakers themselves, they are built from MDF. There are 4 rubber feet on the bottom of each speaker. This speaker is black, but it's also available in white. It features a 3.5-inch wood fiber woofer and an aluminum magnesium alloy tweeter. There is a non-removable grill for both the tweeter and woofer, so it's safe to be used around kids. Now let's talk about the features of these speakers. These tiny speakers pack a ton of features. First, these are DSP speakers, meaning the signal input will be converted to a digital signal, processed and converted back to an analog signal that is optimized for the drivers of the speakers. The advantage of a DSP speaker is that usually it can play louder and produce lower bass frequencies when compared to a fully analog speaker. There are 3 main ways to input signal to these speakers. First, there's an RCA and aux-in port for analog line-in signal. The RCA port also supports phono input, so you can use it with a turntable without a phono preamp, which may come in handy for some people. Second, there's a USB-C input port, optical input port, and a coaxial port for digital signal input. You can directly connect your computer using the USB port and connect it to a CD player or a TV using the coaxial and optical input port. The third way to connect these is through Bluetooth. These speakers have Bluetooth 5.4 built into them, which supports LDAC, AAC, and SBC, so it's capable of streaming high-res music through Bluetooth. There's also a subwoofer output on the right back panel for you to connect an active subwoofer to it. The third feature is my favorite feature of these speakers, is that it can support a 31-band PEQ adjustment using the Fiio app on Android or iOS. It connects to the speakers using Bluetooth. This is a super useful feature as you can adjust the EQ to adapt the speakers to your listening space and desk. I would really suggest you to use this feature to get the best performance for these speakers. Although the EQ is controlled through Bluetooth, the EQ actually works on all inputs, including analog line inputs, which makes it super versatile. So here's my EQ setting for my desktop setup. It's usually closer to the wall, so I put a negative bass shelf to reduce the boominess, and also a dip here to counter the desktop reflections. You can use the House Curve app on your phone and adjust the EQ accordingly to your listening space. Placement is always the most important thing for speakers in my opinion. I would suggest you toe in these speakers to around your shoulder when setting them up. I usually place mine about 60 to 70 centimeters apart, and my listening distance is also around 70 centimeters from the speakers. But more importantly, you would need something to raise the height or tilt the speakers upwards to your ears. You can simply use books or speaker stands like these on the screen. I've linked them in the description if you're interested. These are crucial to have to get the speakers to sound correct and have good imaging. So here are the in-room measurements I took with the House Curve app in a relatively open space. It's not measured with calibrated equipment, just my iPhone, so just use it as a rough reference. The gray curve is the frequency response of the SA1, and the green curve is the frequency response of my Genelec 8010 active speakers. Those have been my daily studio monitors for a lot of years, so it's a good point of reference for me, and since they are similar in size, I think the Genelecs would make a good point of comparison. My finding for the measurement is that the base frequency below 200 Hz is more linear on the SA1 than the Genelecs. They both start rolling off at around 60 Hz, which is actually quite good for small speakers like these. The mid-range for both of these speakers are relatively flat with no significant peaks, which is what you would want, but the SA1 has quite a huge dip at 8K Hz, which is likely intentional to reduce listening fatigue and sibilance to create a warmer tonality. Listening to the SA1 in its stock EQ and stock form, I would describe the SA1 as a warm, fun-sounding, and punchy monitor. I think it is tuned towards being a more fun-sounding and musical sound, instead of a flat studio monitor sound. By the way, I have recorded a sound demo of the Fiio SA1 compared to the Genelec 8010A. Check out that video if you want to have an idea on how these speakers actually may sound in reality. The bass is actually quite impactful if you're listening to drums or kick drums, which should be around 80 Hz. If it's placed too close to the wall, the mid-bass is actually a bit too boomy or overpowering. That's why I adjusted the EQ of these speakers when I used them on my desktop. I actually think the bass and sub-bass performance is slightly better on the SA1 when compared to the Genelecs. It's deeper and more linear. The mid-range of the SA1 sounds warm and slightly laid back. As shown in the measurements, there's a dip in the 8K region, which tones down sibilance, breathing sounds in vocals, and reduces the bite in instruments like electric guitar. Personally, I would like a bit more bite in the lower treble, so I would add a small peak in the EQ to compensate. Instrument separation is good once you adjusted the height and tilt angle of these speakers. Guitar strings feel slightly laid back by default, but still reveals a lot of detail. Overall, it's a very enjoyable, non-fatiguing sound in its original setting. The soundstage depth and width is quite good on the SA1, but I find the center imaging to be not as precise as my Genelec monitors. However, it can be improved by tweaking the placement, but the sweet spot in the soundstage is not as wide as the Genelecs in my experience. In summary, I think the SA1 is a very capable active speaker for $200. It has basically every feature you would want and expect for a speaker. As long as you're using these in a relatively close range, within 1.2 meters, around 4 feet, I think you'll be happy with these. There's also an option to add a subwoofer and fine-tune the frequency response through the EQ if you want better sub-bass response from them. Personally, I still prefer my Genelec 8010A monitors a bit more in terms of sound quality, but they are $800 a pair, and you still need to use them with a DAC and XLR cables, which will probably cost around at least $1,000 in total. Consider these being just $200, and they pack so much functionality in this tiny package. I think they are a great deal and option for those looking for an entry-level active speaker. And you can really fine-tune them to your liking with the EQ in the Fiio app. So this is the end of my video. Let me know if you have any questions about the Fiio SA1. And please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you found it useful. Don't forget to check out the sound recording demo of the SA1 and the Genelecs too. Thank you for watching.